The situation in the Middle East itself has gradually returned to a state of new normality. Only one country in the region, Tunisia, is moving, albeit very uncertainly, towards more stable institutions of state power based on the principle of democracy. Other states that found themselves at the center of the Arab Spring returned to those forms of statehood that were historically characteristic of the Middle East. The game of big and medium external powers is gradually returning as the most important factor in the development of the region. In this game, Russia's partners are not only the West but also regional forces such as Iran and Turkey. The national interests of these countries may not coincide with Russian ideas and even come into conflict with them. This, however, is not an obstacle to building a working relationship with them. The most important factor is that Iran is not, and Turkey is less a part of the collective institutions and community of the West, which has set the goal of undermining Russia's existing political system. The more Turkey becomes involved in regional security issues and plays an independent role in them, the better it is for Russia's interests. Preventing a threat to Russia was not its only task in returning to the Middle East and, therefore, to big international politics. Moscow's active participation in regional affairs is an indispensable attribute of a great power capable of defending its idea of justice on a global scale. At the center of these ideas is the moral imperative of preserving state sovereignty as the only factor guaranteeing stability and cooperation in international politics. Despite its scale and military power, Russia has traditionally taken a conservative, value-based approach to international affairs. Therefore, the stake on sovereign states as participants in international cooperation is natural for Moscow. Syria, thanks to Russian politics, is the only modern example of the preservation of such a state, despite the pronounced intentions to destroy it, which have at one point emanated from a significant group of great and middle powers. In fact, in the Middle East the strategies of Russia and the West clashed over the most important issue for the modern world, the right to violate the formal principle of the sovereign equality of states within the UN system. After the Cold War, the United States and its allies have arrogated the privilege of dictating the interpretation of this principle in their selfish interests. This privilege became, in fact, their main acquisition, much more important than territorial conquests in Eastern Europe or presence in the territory of the former USSR. In 2011, the United States and Europe were able to act at their own discretion for the last time when they achieved the overthrow of the Libyan government by military means. Syria and the Russian intervention there on the side of the legitimate government put an end to the history of the unipolar world. Russian involvement in the affairs of the Middle East has solved this problem of international politics inherited from the short era of Western domination. Now any sovereign state, when assessing the possibilities of its survival, can assume that there is not one, but several sources of power in the world on which to rely. China has not yet demonstrated a convincing ability to act similarly to Russia. However, its economic ties can potentially become an alternative source of development funds for countries that are not ready to rely on the mercy of the United States and Europe. The results of the Arab Spring were positive for Russia and were able to compensate to a certain extent for the damage suffered from the diplomatic defeat in Ukraine in 2014. Following its success in Syria, Moscow has been more confident in its response to the crisis in Belarus in the summer and autumn of 2020, which could theoretically lead to a dramatic outcome for European security. Unlike Russian policy in Asia, where a presence must be backed by years of economic gains, in the Middle East Russia shows its best side in terms of diplomatic skill and military resolve. The current situation in the region inspires optimism. These properties will remain in the foreseeable future. They are the most important for achieving results.